On today's episode of My First Deal, we have Jeremy Davis. He's one of the leaders in the Sub-2 mentorship, and man, you can really see why. He's a born leader, mentor, investor, and speaker. I pretty much just asked him one question on this and let him go. And in the background, I was taking notes and basically restructuring my whole business model. His story is captivating and you can really tell why he excels in this industry. Really quick, subscribe to the channel, not only for this weekly podcast, but also to follow along Lauren and I's journey from total beginner to financially free. We made this channel to inspire those of you waiting on the fence to start today. Jeremy is doing deals all over Salt Lake City. So if you have any sellers that you need help closing, send them to his team and get those locked up. Grab your notepad for this one because Jeremy lays out some golden nuggets. Let's do it. Jeremy, what's up, brother? How's it going? Happy Sunday.
What's up, brother? Happy Sunday to you as well.
I appreciate you joining me. I know you're a new dad. I hope all that's going as planned.
So far, we're almost 3 months in. So in a couple of days, it's going to be 3 months. I'm enjoying it in the fact that he's not a potato any longer. He's actually becoming more human and he's actually smiling and goo-gooing and gagaing. And so I feel a little bit less useless. So
right.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for sure.
That's so cool. Okay, awesome. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Please introduce yourself to the viewers and kind of let people know how you got into real estate and, paint a picture of what your life was like before you got into real estate and lead us all the way up until that first deal.
Okay. All right. So I can go back in time right now. Let's see here. This is a little bit more of a backstory. So I'm going to go a little bit further back than just right before the real estate. I myself was always somewhat of a serial entrepreneur. In my early years, when I was like 18, 19, I had a couple people actually die in my arms randomly. And because I was in Boy Scouts, I decided to become a medic. And so as a medic, I actually, instead of working on an ambulance and getting paid low amounts of pay, I decided to move my way into the local film union. I was in California at the time, Los Angeles, and I worked as a movie set medic. And so I handed out Tylenol and tampons and really, basically, I trained for trauma and I got stuck there, bored out of my mind every single day. Average days worked were about 15, 16 hours. Some days would go over 18 hours plus. And I started slowly dying on the inside. Mentally, I was just breaking down. I was super, super bored. I was physically getting unhealthy, all the craft service food you're eating. And, so my roommates at the time, again, I lived in Los Angeles, and they came back with a couple little baby plants of marijuana. And I didn't smoke. I smoked when I was a teenager, but anyway, back then at this point, I didn't smoke at all. And they're like, "What do we do with this?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm bored. Let me be on set with my laptop and my little hotspot, and let me learn how to grow pot." And so I learned how to grow weed off these two plants. I did it in my closet. I did like a little makeshift grow situation. And at harvest, my roommates and all their friends were like, "This is the best marijuana we've ever smoked." And I said, "Guys, I'm kicking you out. I'm going to turn my 3-bedroom apartment into a commercial grow." And I did exactly that. I got licensed. I had my, all my commercial, my business, everything like that going strong. And I was actually a contracted grower for a number of the dispensaries. So technically speaking, while I was a medic, I was growing for some of the best medicinal purposes out there in California. So now fast forward to 2010. I did this for a little while. I saved up some mattress money. I'll just put it that way. And 2010, major motorcycle wreck. I got hit head on by a Harley. I was in the canyons of Malibu. I got hit head on, and the Harley sent me 150 feet off the cliff. So I broke my back, my shoulders, my arms. I got airlifted out. It was a very hard recovery. I mean, you could imagine I'm in double cast, double slings for a very long period of time. Rehab was very difficult, but the worst part about it all was the chemical dependency, right? The addiction to the painkillers. I knew as a medic, I knew I was going to be getting addicted. I mean, I couldn't just not take it. Like imagine your back being broken, shoulders, arms, everything, and trying to sleep, right? So I was just dosing up every single day. And so 2012 rolls around. I kind of lost my career as a medic. I wasn't able to lift up patients if I needed to, so I wasn't able to do that. So 2012 rolls around, Los Angeles. We all know that 2012 was the climb of the market, right? Real estate. This is when we were out of that dip and was finally doing what it needed to do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy real estate. I've got cash. I've got great credit. And I go to some realtors and I go to some mortgage lenders. And it's funny that I look back at it now and now I look at realtors as being 90% of them just being dumb as all hell and they have no idea about creative finance. So they told me the same thing. They're like, oh, you can't get a house. You can't buy a house. You've got the cash, you've got the credit, but you need the work history for a conventional loan. So taking no as an answer, and again, I wish that PACE existed or somebody existed and saying, hey, you've got the cash, you don't need to go to a bank. There's other ways around this. But if I had known that at the time, things would have been different. But nonetheless, they said, why don't you go back to being a server? This is what I did when I was a teenager. So I went back to working in the restaurants. And while I was working in the restaurants, I also decided to go back to school. And I finished my degree in business. And in that, a few of those classes, we were doing some stock market, like mock trials and games and stuff. And I did very, very well in one of my semesters within one of my business classes. I think I made like a 49% return in a matter of a few months. So my professor was like, you're a natural. And I'm like, yes, I am. So with my money, I decided to invest in the stock market. And I'll tell you right now, when you have a lot of money and a painkiller addiction, you don't make the right choices at all. So I started investing. I did 95% of my deals were all emotionally based. Like I was an insomniac at the time. So I was investing in medical companies that had sleeping pills. And like, I was just so dumb. And when instead of cutting my losses, I'm like, no, I'm going to stay in this. It's going to come back up. So I lost a little over like $390,000 in the stock market. I lost a lot. And so with that being said, I had to play catch up when it came to real estate. So while I still was in the restaurant biz, I cannot be stagnant. I think most of us that might be listening to this, we're a unique type of person where we can't just be bored at doing what we're doing. We have to try new things. We have to get better every single day. So I moved my way up into being a personal chef, being a private chef. And I was actually on the TV show Master Chef and stuff. And then I became a sommelier. And if you don't know what that is, a sommelier is the wine guy. So, so most people take around 2 to 3 years to study for it. I took about 2.5 months. I passed. I became a somm in Malibu and Beverly Hills. And by that point, I had gotten off the painkillers. So at least I was thinking more clearly. And so now fast forward, 2020 comes around. And actually 2019, November, I get married. And then right after our wedding is when the COVID hit. So I sat there and then they go, hey, your job is done. Your career is done. I mean, technically speaking, my last official title was sommelier and special events director in a very high-end restaurant within Beverly Hills, probably one of the top restaurants. And so they're like, we don't see the next time there's going to be any type of special event where people are going to be sitting down and ordering like a $25,000 bottle of wine. So we're putting you kind of on leave. And so I sat there for about, 3 months playing video games, just bored. I mean, like not knowing what to do. And then, I want to say about April came around and then I started learning about wholesaling. And I don't know where I heard about it, but I thought about like auction.com, right? It's the first place you go when you hear about foreclosures. So I go on auction.com and I see that there's properties all around me that are going to auction. And so I call up one friend that I knew that did real estate investment. His name was Brandon Aquendo, and he lived in Salt Lake City. And so I gave him a call and I said, hey man, like, do you know anything about what they call door knocking? And he's like, yeah, I absolutely do. And so what he identified, I see it now. He identified this hungry guy that was ready to go door knocking. Why not try to recruit him in some fashion? So Brandon was like, why don't you come check out Salt Lake and see if this is a place you want to move? So I first checked out Boise and where my wife's father lives, checked out Boise, and I was too bored there. I was like, I can't do this. No way. So then we go to Salt Lake and we were there, I want to say there for 3 days in the beginning of May. And a month and a half later, we'd already put in our 30-day notice and we moved out here July 1st. And so I knew only one person. And now we're kind of leading into where real estate started here. Another reason that Salt Lake really did appeal to me was, if you know anything about the laws here in Utah for alcohol sucks here, really does suck. And fine dining really does suck. So the term is I burnt the boats behind me. That kind of intentionally why I chose Salt Lake, where I knew that I wasn't going to be holding on to my career any longer. So I moved here. I did a couple of interviews at restaurants, and they're like looking at my resume. They go, "Why are you even in Salt Lake? That just doesn't make any sense." And then when they all offered me the jobs, I sat there and I went, "No, I can't. I'm letting go. Like, I'm letting go of this career that I've been holding on to for 10 years. This was only supposed to be temporary, right? This was only supposed to be so I can get my W-2 so that I can buy a house and do all that kind of stuff." So I said no more to being a sommelier or a chef. So I started with Brandon, and the money that I had saved up, I had somewhere around a little over $100,000 that I had been saving up again. Remember, I lost a lot of money in the stock market, and then I just, as a server, very frugally, I saved money. And so came here with a little bit over $100,000. And real quick, I want to say, like, that $100,000, looking back at it now, I wish that I didn't have that. Okay. Because what that $100,000 allowed me to do was pretend that I had a great buffer of spending money, but I was spending it incorrectly. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, absolutely. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to pay $36,000 for SEO. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, because SEO is going to be great because people are going to come to my website and then I'm going to get deals. And no, right. So spend money on that. I went through different CRMs. I spent a lot of money making mistakes because I was trying to perfect the system before I knew what the system was supposed to be in the first place. Right. So when I moved out here, Brandon and I think we toured somewhere around 85 to 90 properties from wholesalers. What we did when we first moved out here was the goal was to be a fix and flipper. That's all I wanted to do, right? Like, I didn't know about creative finance yet. I still had no idea what sub 2 was, but I wanted to be a fix and flipper. So Brandon, he's one of my best friends, but he's a developer. He's a builder. He's a broker. He owns the biggest painting company in Salt Lake. So this guy is also a serial entrepreneur as well. And so touring all these properties, we got outbid every single time. We finally find a property in an area that he liked, in an area that I liked, and we bid $100,000 over asking. So they were probably going to be making, realistically, they were probably going to be making about $135,000 to maybe $170,000 off this deal, right? So they call us at the end of the bidding war, because in Salt Lake, that's what all the big wholesalers do. They all do bidding wars. They get all the interested parties to go to a showing, and then, hey, whoever puts in the highest and best by the end of this time limit, then you win it. I don't do that, and I'll explain why. But yeah, all the wholesaler companies do that. So we win. They call us up that night, and they're like, congratulations, you won the bid. We're going to give you all the details tomorrow, get all the contracts signed and all that kind of stuff. And Brandon and I are like, thank you. Finally, it's been 4 months by this point. And, we've been pulling out our hair, and like, Brandon's got a job, right? He does his other stuff, but I'm sitting here going, I am so bored. I have nothing to do. Like, all I'm doing is just going on websites and just trying to learn about, different properties. And by the way, it also was a great time where I learned a lot about comping. Right. So Brandon gave me access to the MLS. And so I learned all about how to underwrite values. I learned all about rehab values, cost, all that stuff. So that made me become very good at comping and underwriting deals. So I will say that was a benefit. But next morning, we get a phone call. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. We called like 7 times, no answer. Then they finally call us and they go, we've got some bad news. We sold it to a friend. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, did this friend put in their bid after the time cutoff? And they're like, yes, they put it in late last night. We're really sorry. And I'm like, that's not the right way to do business. Like, that's not very fair. And so what I decided to do at that point, that was probably the biggest wholesale company in all of Utah, and also nationwide. They're a very, very big company. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of said, F you. I'm going to become a wholesaler. I'm going to put you out of business. Now, I haven't done that yet. It's going to take a while.
I was going to say, have you done that?
But I was so offended that I'm like, I'm just going to learn what it's like to be a wholesaler. I'm going to take my $100,000, and instead of going into fix and flips, I'm going to invest that into wholesaling. So again, as I was mentioning before, I spent a lot of money on things that shouldn't be spent money on, right? What we know now, what I know now is door knocking, SMS, cold calling. That is the foundational layer to get deals started. And so what I was saying before is, before this actually started, a huge amount of being a beginner investor where you haven't done a deal is massively based on mindset. It really, really is. And so I started in Salt Lake. And what many of you probably don't know is that Salt Lake became the most competitive market throughout COVID for wholesaling. We have more investors in this local area of Salt Lake than all of Phoenix, and we are 1/3 the population of Phoenix. So you can imagine that every single homeowner thinks that their house is made of gold and ivory. It was very, very difficult. So I joined a mentorship, not sub 2 yet. I joined one with a guy named Jeff Rappaport. He has a podcast called the Creative Financing Podcast. Wealth of knowledge, very, very intelligent guy. And he's actually here in Salt Lake. So I started with him actually, I take it back. In my local RIA, there was a guy named awhile. Nobody really knows him. He's under the radar, but he loves doing lease options. And so he gave a 2-day presentation for the annual RIA event. And my mind was blown. Okay. Like, it's called transactional engineer, right? So he's engineering different transactions. And I go, this is great. I love this. This is the answer. But it's not. And I'm going to be clear on this. Every single person that joins sub 2 and they've never even done a deal and they think that's the answer, it's not. It's really, really not. Creative finance is something that I'll say, and I'll get into it more deeply. Creative finance is something you should add on to your tool belt once you actually have the belt on and you know what you're doing, right? And so, but going away from that, Augie Bylot then made me learn about creative finance, which then I joined Jeff Rappaport. And Jeff Rappaport has a small little mentorship that he does. And it's a great way to learn about different lease options, subject to seller finance. Like, he basically, and again, if you don't listen to that podcast, the Creative Financing Podcast with Jeff Rappaport, fantastic. He makes sure that every single one of his guests talk about some form of creative finance. So it's very focused on that. So I'm in his mentorship, and I was very hungry at building a big business. And a lot of the people in his mentorship I saw were not really eager or driven to build out something really, really big. And so with that, I started looking for other events outside of that, which is where I came to Pace Morby, sub 2. One of the things that I hate the most was that when I mentioned to you why creative finance was a negative thing for me, was that just as I started to get my direct to seller wholesaling started and I started to gain traction, that's when creative finance came into play. And it was nothing but a shiny object, huge shiny object. It stopped me from giving out offers. It made me, I was basically talking about seller finance to every single seller because I thought that's the answer, right? Everyone's going to want that, right? And so I wasted a lot of time. And then when I joined sub 2, I very quickly elevated, I would say, as being a closer within the group. You can imagine being a sommelier. It's my job to convince you why this $25,000 bottle of grape juice should be drinking tonight, right? It's not an easy sell. And so it's a matter of, you have to, every single table that you walk up to in your restaurant is a brand new seller that you're talking to every single time. And you have to be able to read them physically, visually, emotionally, everything like that. You have to identify who they are so you can try to get the sale. So whether it's a $100 bottle or a $10,000 bottle, that's what I specialized in. So I kind of found my way in sub 2 as being somewhat of the closer. Salt Lake, I was gaining no traction. I was getting leads, but all of them wanted $1 million over asking. It really wasn't going anywhere. And so I started to do more JV stuff, and I started helping out students nationwide. And I started doing a little bit of my own marketing in Ohio and Indiana and the Carolinas. The shift in the conversation was night and day, black and white. In Salt Lake City, everyone's like, my house is made of gold, pay me a fortune. And then as soon as I go to Ohio, they're like, will you just take over my mortgage? It was a crazy, crazy conversation difference. So I start marketing in Indianapolis and Indiana and Ohio. And that leads me to where I got my very first deal. It was in a city called Gary, Indiana, nicknamed Scary Gary. This is a true ghetto. There was, when I was marketing there at one point, one night, there was an arson that I think burned down 28 homes in a neighborhood, and nobody even blinked an eye. Right. This is like a scary place. I would never go down there at nighttime, ever walk through it. But I started marketing, and every single homeowner that owns a property out there was trying to sell. Every single person. This is like, if they had an F category, this would be an F category, but technically it's a D class neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I contract a property at $2,200, a 3-bed, 2-bath. Okay. God. A 3-bed, 2-bath home for $2,200. And when I finally got photos, I got someone that was local to help me out. I finally got photos, and a tree had fallen into the roof. It was completely exposing the bathtub. There was human feces on every wall there was. Oh my God. The place was an absolute pigsty. And pigsty is saying nicely. And so I start marketing it out the best way that I know, through like Facebook Marketplace. And I get literal crackheads trying to be my buyer. Okay. Mm-hmm. There was this one lady I remember, and I love her. She gives me a call, and she's like, I really want to buy this property, but can I buy it on a land contract? And over there in the Midwest, in that area, a lot of people talk about land contracts. It's actually a very common way of buying properties. But her goal, she wanted to buy it for $8,000, but to pay me over the next 5 years. And her goal, and I quote, I want to get a crackhead with a contractor's license to move in there and have them work on the property while they live there. And then I'll pay you at the end of that 5 years once they fixed it up.
All right. She had a plan.
I said, no, thank you. And eventually I found a gentleman, an actual like real investor, that he bought it for $6,600. So I made $2,400. And I learned his strategy was actually, he just puts in about $20,000 and then he just wraps it. Or he seller finances it, in other words. Mm-hmm. And he seller finances it for, if let's say the ARV was 40,000, because I'd say in that area, the ARV was about 40 or 50,000. He would seller finance it at about 60 to 70. And they would give a down payment, and then he would make his initial investment back, or at least close to it. And he repeated that process. He had a lot of properties that he was doing that with. So I sell my first deal, proof of concept. I did it in the ghetto of Gary, Indiana. Then, as I said, I started doing more JV deals. I started being known as, it was JV with JD, right? So I had a lot of students that were bringing me leads and really, really helping those students. And so we were doing deals in, basically all over the country. And that is when I decided to bring on my wife as our JV liaison, right? So if you don't know what a JV is, by the way, joint venture, basically working with somebody that is either of a higher level with you so that they can lift you up, or you're working with people below you, which helps you get deals. So bringing my wife in as the JV liaison is because I realized that I started needing to build out systems. I couldn't do this on a pen and, pad of paper any longer, because every single student that I was working with, they wanted constant updates. If they're bringing me a lead that they bought with paid for with a VA or whatever it may be, they don't want to feel like they're being lost and just, thrown into the shadows. So I had a JV liaison basically giving weekly updates of where the lead was going and all that stuff. And it worked out really well. It was definitely a great way also to start incorporating my wife into the new business. Before I ever got the deal, I don't think she ever really believed that this was going to be real. I knew it was going to be real, but I don't think that she ever saw the proof of concept until she saw the, whatever it was, the $4,400, right? So yeah, 44. Yeah. Anyway, so she comes in. I also at the time was in a partnership that I got approached from somebody else, and that partnership was a complete waste of time. I wasted a lot of money in that partnership. And the reason that I want to just bring that partnership into this is that I didn't vet that person. I based it off of what I heard of who he was. Okay. So the reason I bring that into this is that I want all of you guys to hear this, that like partnering is probably one of the best things that anybody could ever do in this business, because to be successful by yourself, all alone in real estate, it's extremely hard. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. We all know what we're good at. And there's so many different facets of real estate that you need to have other people to be able to handle other projects at the same time. So I really will promote getting a partner or finding the right partner. But with this, because I based it off of reputation alone, I did not vet this person. I said, yes, I would love to be your partner. Like, this person was above me. And I thought to myself, like, what could go wrong? Well, everything went wrong. It was not a right fit. This person took advantage. I wasted money. I wasted time. But the one great thing that came from this was that my acquisition manager at the time, one of them, I had a few, when times got tough, he actually tripled down, quadrupled down. He tried even harder and harder and harder. And when initially this partnership broke up, this is when Alex Smades, who's my partner today, he came to me and said, what can I do to earn your partnership? What could I do to earn equity within your business? Jeremy, I love your vision. I love seeing who you are. And so with that, I'm going to pause that part of the story. But what I want to come back to is the term integrator versus visionary. If you haven't read the book Rocket Fuel is a great book for identifying your personality traits about what you have strengths and weaknesses in, right? So a visionary, that person is going to be better at social connections. That person's going to be better at coming up with different ideas, pushing the boundaries, trying to push the needle forward. Integrator, that person is going to be spreadsheets. That person is going to be the systems behind it. And when I first started in Sub 2, I was actually known as being the visionary integrator. I was a 50-50. When I took the rocket fuel test multiple times, I got, I think, like 98% to 96%, right? It was a tie. I look back at that now, and when I take the rocket fuel test again, I'm like 98% visionary and 5% integrator. And the reason that those scores were tied in the beginning was because I was convincing myself that I was good at every single thing that I did. I was convincing myself that I like spreadsheets. I was convincing myself that I like to take notes. I don't at all. When I'm on seller calls, thank God that there's actual audio recordings. Or when I'm on calls, I have my team maybe on a Zoom with me and they're taking notes, because those seller calls, if I'm not taking notes, it allows me to be sniper focused on the conversation. It allows me to think about what's the next 10 things I'm going to say to lead this seller down the right conversation, where I'm not writing down, okay, 100,000, the roof needs work. I've got other people for that, right? So you begin to identify your strengths and your weaknesses about what you're really good at. Now, again, as a beginner, you're going to be a solopreneur. You're going to be by yourself. You might have your wife, or you might have another partner that you find right away, but chances are that's probably not how it's going to be 5 years from now. Right? But in the beginning, you are going to have to do all of the things, and shifting the mindset to where you can accept that some of the things you're doing now are not going to be things you're going to do a year from now. And so there's a term called the conveyor belt. And do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, for those that don't know what the conveyor belt is, it is your from A to Z, the marketing that you do to get a deal through to the finish line. Right. And so the first is going to be your lead generation, right? Without a lead, if you don't have any leads, you don't have a business at all. That's where, when I first realized this, that's when I started hiring virtual assistants. So virtual assistants, I'm an American. I am so terrible at cold calling people over and over and over and over again because I'm not consistent. I don't have that consistency. And the same thing goes for SMS as well. I might be able to get a couple of leads here or there, but I've got so many things on my plate on a given day. You would never see me consistently for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week making cold calls. It just wouldn't happen. And so in the beginning, I realized I was inconsistent, and then I immediately hired VAs. That is the only thing that I'll say, having the money that I had, that's the only thing that I would say was the right hire or the right spend, was getting those VAs. So I hired a couple of VAs, and through my sales training, through what I was teaching them, those VAs started to do incredibly, incredibly well. And one of the VAs that I worked with said, Jeremy, I've worked in so many different call centers and so many different ISAs and all this type of stuff in the past. I've never had training like you do. Would you be open to creating a virtual assistant business with me? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I would love that. And this was at the time that I was in that other partnership. And Looking back at it now, I probably wouldn't have started Prime Virtuals. I wouldn't have started them knowing what I know now. And the reason that when I started that company, I was distracted. I wasn't looking at the acquisition business. I was looking at the VA business, which allowed that other partner to do some trickery on the acquisition side of things because I was blinded. I had a blindfold on. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was spending money on that. I was supporting that side of the business, but I was also creating a VA business. And so that was number one that I really, really regret. Number two was that I didn't realize how much time creating a virtual assistant company was actually going to take. It's not like a software company. A software company is a bunch of ones and zeros, and someone either uses the company or they don't. With a VA company, this is human to human interaction. And you also have to create systems, and you have to create managers, and you have to have people in place to be able to watch over those other people. And I didn't really realize that once that partnership fell apart, how much was going to be on my shoulders from both the acquisition company as well as the virtual assistant company. So I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But basically, I was spread 50-50 too thin on both companies. And that taught me one lesson that I want to get into, which is avoid the shiny objects. Okay. This is one of the most important rules that I learned. Was I sat there stressed out, pulling my hair out, not knowing what business to focus on. The VA business started to do well when I put time into it, but there was a big problem with Prime Virtuals. It was the marketing factor. I was the driving force. People were not coming into Prime if I wasn't talking about them. And every single time that I would talk about them, I would have to basically give kind of like one-on-one coaching with every single person that I spoke to try to explain to them why they should use my company or why they should use a VA. And so it became very, very time constraining, where I spent a lot of time on that. But then if I went back to the real estate business and I kind of put that one onto the sidelines, the VA business suffered. Clients, they come and they go, but if they're not coming, if they're not being brought in, then they just go. And then you lose that. And so there was people over there. I had by January 1st of 2021, I had 2022, I had a physical call center. I had all my VAs in one space. And so this was doing great. But the real estate business was not at all. And so now I want to circle back. I said I was going to come back to Alex, my partner. When Alex said to me that he wanted to become my partner, what could he do to earn that equity share? I said, I am tired of JVing. I don't want to JV anymore. Okay. And the reason I explain that is that for a new student or a new investor, JVing is a great thing to do because you're bringing your leads to somebody that knows more than you do, which helps it get over the finish line a lot easier, and you learn by example. But once I'm on the top of that totem pole where the JV leads are being brought to me, there was a problem within the Sub2 community that I didn't really anticipate, which was every day that there was a Zoom, there were other students that were in the side chat of those Zooms that were filtering all of the easy to close leads. Everyone on the side chat, I'm a closer, send me your deals, So all of these students that didn't know how to close an easy deal were getting filtered off by these other people first. So then once those people were not able to close those deals, let's say it was a harder to close deal or it wasn't a deal in the first place, that's when it got fed to me. So it eventually became extremely toxic. It became poisonous to my business because I was getting, out of 100 leads, one might be a deal. 99 of them had to take my bandwidth, had to take my money. All the time that I put into it, it went nowhere because they were just probably either not deals at all, or there was like 50 different moving parts for every single deal that took all of my time, right? Like if you're trying to stop a foreclosure that's in a probate, that's in a blah, 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 there is so many moving parts that a high level person has to handle. And that was me. So when Alex said to me, what can I do to earn equity share? I said, I don't want to do any more JVs nationwide. I want to, now that I've sharpened my teeth and I've got my skills to where they are, I want us to build a business back in Utah. Now, remember, Utah was scary back in the day, right? It was so hard to get a deal, so difficult to get a deal. But I said, it's time. we've got the skills. We know what we're doing now. We've got the systems in place. I want to build out a marketing company based in Salt Lake. And so Alex did exactly that. In that period of time, this was when we made the decision to start working together. This was January of 2020. And that's also when I brought him into Prime Virtuals to help me out because, again, I couldn't do this all on my own. And from, I want to say in February, I think it was, or actually I take that back. In December, I went to an event called Scale and Escape with Kent Clothier. When I went to that event, the reason I was actually at that event in San Diego was there was a small mastermind by a guy named Stratton Brown, great investor. He's from Utah. He lives in California now. He hosted a small little mini mastermind here in Salt Lake. And so there was a guy named like Noah Hoffman who I had met. I saw was in Salt Lake. He's like, dude, come out to Top Golf. This is where we're all at. So I met up with them and they said, hey, come tomorrow to the second half of the mastermind and just meet everyone. So I met a lot of high performing individuals. There was a guy named Rod Vasquez, Lo Silva, like a lot of really high level individuals. And they both said to me, Jeremy, I think you should probably consider joining the boardroom, which was the mastermind that Kent Clothier did. And they said, but first, maybe go to the Scale and Escape event in San Diego that's coming up in a couple of weeks and check it out. And so not knowing anything about this, I had never been to, other than our local RIA, I had never been to any type of real estate event ever. So I said, screw it, let's go. I go down to San Diego. I fly there at Scale and Escape. And I spent about 95% of the event in the lobby, right? So I wasn't really listening to the speakers. All the questions that I had about VA companies, about acquisitions, about whatever it was, I started talking to all the high level people that were hanging out in the lobby that didn't really necessarily need to be in there for the hoorah rah speeches, but they were out there, so all I started doing was networking. I immediately saw right there that this is where I needed to be with these other people, high level conversations, because I was kind of in a funnel. I take that back, not a funnel, a vacuum. That being in sub 2 and being on the top level of sub 2, I was pouring into a lot of people's cups, but nobody other than Pace was pouring into mine. Right. And Pace, I can't ask him to get on a phone call with me every single day and hold my hand and be there for me. And so my cup started to kind of empty out. And so when I joined the Boardroom Mastermind, it was based off of all high level people that actually know their KPIs, know their systems in place and stuff like that. And at that time when I joined, I had like $30,000 to my name. Remember that other partnership that I was in, a lot of money got wasted. A lot of money got taken. And so I was very, very scared that I was going to fail. Think about this for a second. Like all the deals I was doing, I was just throwing away money. And I didn't track any of my KPIs. And so when I joined the boardroom, the first board we were in was February 28th of 2022. And Kent told me, kill the VA company. Kill it. Take it behind the barn and shoot it in the head. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't. There was people, at the time I had around 60 employees. It was important for me not to let those families down. And so what I said to him was, I can't do that, but what I will do is I will make you a promise. And I will, in my acquisition business, I will put the VA business, I'll put Prime Virtuals on hold, and I will focus on my acquisition business 100%. And I will make you, I promise you, $150,000 every single month until 3 months from now, the next boardroom. So I make that promise to him. He makes that challenge. He goes, all right, challenge accepted. Let's see where this goes. And I didn't hit it. I didn't. I got close though. I hit in that quarter, I hit $211,000 in net revenue. And so the reason is I'm happy about that number, but I'll tell you this much. We didn't turn on our marketing for Utah until March 3rd. A couple of days after we got back. If I had turned on that marketing a month or two before where those leads started to season and mature, I would have hit that challenge no matter what. But it took about a month before those leads started to mature. And then again, what did we do? We went door knocking. We went driving for dollars. We did SMS. We did cold calling. Alex and I got back into the trenches and we grinded so hard. And so we made $211,000. And I went back to that boardroom and Kent was like, wow, This is, I mean, you didn't hit the challenge you put out for it, but you did great and fantastic. But now here's the problem. Prime Virtuals was near death now because for 3 months, I stopped talking about it. I stopped trying to bring in new clients. I stopped trying to be that funnel, bringing them in. And so Prime Virtuals was suffering heavily. So what did I do? I shifted from Cash Quick Buyers, my acquisition company, to Prime Virtuals and put all my time in there to then pump life back into Prime Virtuals. And what happened? Acquisition suffered. Okay, so I'm circling back around to the whole shiny object syndrome that everybody out there, every investor, they always believe the grass is greener on the other side. And there was this one guy at the very first mastermind at the boardroom that I went to. His name is Dan Walters. We sat down at dinner one night and we're surrounded by, I'd say 20 or 30 people all talking about real estate. And he just looks at me and he goes, let's have a conversation right now. And he was one of the guys that was actually leading the room. So I knew that he was elevated. He knew what he was doing. And this guy does well over probably $1 million a month, right? Very, very high level. And he said, there is one rule that him and his partner live by that is a non-negotiable. And that is the words, we don't do that. I'm just going to say that again. We don't do that. If you look at every successful business in the world, they all got their fame. They all got their start and their foundation built on becoming a master at one thing, right? And so what I did at that point, when I heard that, I went back to Alex and I said, Alex, we don't do that. So we don't do Airbnbs. We don't do business acquisitions. We don't do anything of those sorts because those are all shiny objects. Something about the Sub-2 community, while it is amazing as a community itself, it is also a giant casino floor with dinging lights, shining things, ding, 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 nothing but distractions. And that's where all the students that I talk to, that's where they all have a very hard time is that when they're a brand new investor and they've never even done a deal, they have no idea where to focus. And so looping back around to anybody that's listening to this podcast right now, that's never, ever done a deal, don't focus on 5 markets, focus on 1. Focus on, if you can, focus on your local community, your local market. Now, granted, if you're in a market that has, 1,000 population and you're in some rural hick town of Kentucky, maybe that's not the right place to get started in real estate investment yet. That's when I support going virtual. But if you are in a market that is at least 50,000 population, and that is your local market, the advantage to being local, to going to seller appointments, to seeing the properties, to shaking the hands, to creating the relationships, to creating the brand for yourself so that everyone begins to know you, the realtors know you, all that kind of stuff. The advantage to being physically there is 10 times the advantage of going virtual in Gary, Indiana. Now, again, I did get my first deal in Gary, Indiana, which was a proof of concept, which was a great feeling to have. But now that I'm back at Utah, I don't want to be anywhere else in the country. I only want to be in Utah, and we are also in Las Vegas. The reason I say that is Alex is from Las Vegas. So his family is there. We know the market. We know the neighborhoods. And it's something I failed to mention. Before COVID, my actual goal in that Beverly Hills restaurant was to transfer to their Las Vegas branch. So that was actually my goal. And then when COVID happened, that obviously didn't happen, but I did every bit of research. I had realtors actually looking for houses for me in Las Vegas, and then COVID hit. So I knew Vegas very well. And then finally, Vegas, it's a 5-hour drive from Salt Lake. So anywhere that's about a 5-hour drive where you can get there, fix a problem for one day, and then drive back and be back the same day for dinner, that was kind of our general rule. So we could be in Boise if we wanted to, but we're not going to. We're just Las Vegas and Utah. And right now, our average assignment fee is $55,000 an assignment. January, we're still going to have to track all of our KPIs for February, but January we hit 191,000 net. Wow. So we are positioned to be probably about $2.5 to $3 million in revenue. Actually, I'm sorry, take it back, not revenue, in net this year if this pace keeps going what it's doing. And so we focus primarily on direct to seller marketing. We use Prime Virtuals for all of our cold calling and all of our SMS. We don't do any Google PPC or anything like that. We are just direct to seller. And all of our team is very good at getting the foundation based, knowing about what that seller is looking for. All the deals, and this is what I'll tell everyone that is a client of Prime. Don't expect, if you're a new investor, don't expect to get a deal for at least 3 months. Repeat that to yourself. Don't expect to get a deal for at least 3 months. If you are starting to market to leads, the chance to find somebody that is going to want to sell to you within that first week and then close within the next week, it's not going to happen. It might happen if you get extremely, extremely lucky, but 99% of all these deals are going to take 8 to 12 touches. They're going to take a little bit of a follow-up. You might get a lead and you might say, hey, do you want to sell your house? And they're like, yeah, I do, but in 3 months. Okay, I'm going to call back in a month and a half. So now you call back in a month and a half, and that 3 months now gets pushed another 3 months, and so on and so forth. But some of the best deals did come from those long-term follow-ups, or the dead lead that we just send a random text to about 6 months later saying, hey, I know you didn't want to sell before, but has anything changed? And they go, actually, my mom died. I do want to sell. And so what we try to convey to every new client that's never done a deal is that don't expect to get paid for at least 3 months. So don't expect to, if you guys don't have a budget, and this is where I go back to, having money or not having money. If you don't have a budget that can support your CRM, your marketing software, your VA for at least 3 months, don't spend that money. Like at that point, you should be focused on your groceries. You should be focused on your rent. I have had students and I've had other people that have come to me that say, oh, I expect to get my first deal in the next 2 weeks because if I can't pay rent next month. And I go, you need to stop. You are living in a world that this is not real. You are hearing all the hype from social media and from YouTube that, oh my God, I got this deal in 1 week and I got paid in 1 week. I'll tell you this much. There was a deal that we had in January that we thought was a $5,000 deal to us. It was going to be just a little base hit. I identified some red flags from the seller when we saw the photos that was sent by her. And I inspected the property. What was supposed to be only paint and carpet and just an easy deal turned out to be a full gut rehab. And I had to renegotiate back down another X number of dollars. And that $5,000 assignment turned into a $49,000 assignment. But that one closed in 2 weeks. But that's because I was also marketing that was a probate and that was a foreclosure. But because I was working with the bank and I was working with the attorneys, a lot of these high level things that I was doing, and we've done it before, that allowed me to close that fast. But if you looked at all of our deals, 90% of them are on the 10th touch or more, and massive, massive follow-up. But I mean, I'll even say this, in the past 2 days, we've locked up 2 different deals. And all of these have been long-term follow-ups, where one of them, the seller is selling to us with 50% down. It hurts. Okay. Normally I would never say 50% down, but they're going to carry the other 50% at 0 payments and zero interest for 10 years. Okay. Right. So I'm having to structure that. Another one is going to be a sub-2 VA loan where I'm just going to be taking it over. Seller bought it a year ago. Isn't able to make the payments, and I'm just going to be coming in, paying off the arrears, all that kind of stuff, and just coming in there. But again, guys, like some of these are easy deals, but many of them are going to be very, very hard. And what separates the real investor from the person that quits is knowing that this roller coaster has a lot more uphill climbs than it does those whoop-de, super fun, let me, scream and have a great time. It's about 90% heartbreak and 10% success. And the success that you see on social media, you're not seeing the other 90% behind it. You're not seeing the bullshit that we have to deal with. And I'm not trying to say this is, don't do real estate investment. I love this. And I'm extremely happy that I have multi-million-dollar portfolio and I've only been doing this for about 2.5 years. But I also grinded, and I grinded very hard. And if you play a video game and you're like, oh, I'm going to be working really hard to get this gun unlocked. When that gun unlocks, you're like, I'm accomplished. But what did you really accomplish in life? You didn't do anything. You just unlocked a little digital piece of something where now you have a gun, and you wasted 7 hours grinding that video game to get that gun. Now I look at life and I go, I'm going to spend 7 hours talking to sellers and making $100,000 plus this month. If you can kind of increase the way you think about those things, and again, adjust your mindset and knowing that what's going to separate you from the person next to you is you are going to grind harder than they ever will. And so what I say to all of our clients with Prime as well is, if you are not calling your leads that we get you, somebody else is, and you are failing your business. And so when going back, and I love how I keep looping back around, when I first mentioned that conveyor belt, the first step is going to be lead generation, whether that's going to be you or whether that's going to be a virtual assistant. If it's you, you need to outsource that as soon as humanly possible, because you need to find that consistency in getting that lead generation in. Once you get the leads generated, the next hardest part for any business owner in this entire business is the lead follow-up. That is the most difficult position to fill, the most difficult position to leverage, and the most difficult position to keep in for yourself when you've got so many other things on your plate that you're trying to balance. But lead follow-up, if you are not following up with your lead, somebody else is. Somebody else is getting that deal. And so being ruthless and relentless at your follow-up is the most important thing that you can do with your business. Now, once you get that lead follow-up in place and you get that deal in place, the next is going to be acquisitions. Okay, so let's say that seller wants to sell to you, and can you negotiate with them? If you're a crappy salesperson, you're not going to get the deal, or you're going to get the deal and it's just not going to be a deal in the first place and the numbers aren't going to work. But you have to be able to go in there and negotiate and work that seller to emotionally and mentally come down on their price so that you yourself can get that property at a discount. Remember, we make our money when we buy the deal, not when we sell it. So all of the deals that I make where we negotiate and we work with the seller, we have to identify how to fix those problems. It's not always just about money. We don't just throw money at somebody, but it's a matter of how do we fix their issues and solve the problems they're facing, because solving that problem allows them to mentally be okay dropping their price. So that's where I would say, if you're a new investor, that's where JVing might actually benefit you to work with a closer or somebody in your market that knows what they're doing. And then at that point, you can kind of sit on their coattails and follow along with them. You bring them the lead, which is, I'll be honest, leads are our pipeline. They are our fuel. We need them. Everyone needs them. So you could bring them a lead and they could help lock it up. And now you can kind of follow along, pay attention to what they say, what they do, and all that stuff. So now, once you hit the acquisition mark and you get it locked up under contract, now is when the handoff happens. So now you've got your transaction coordination. I've got my wife, as I mentioned before, was my JV liaison. Now she's our full-time TC. She's our transaction coordinator. So she knows everything from cash deals to creative and all that stuff. So she's in-house. Alex, we had a huge fight one time about, actually, he wanted to outsource to a TC. And I said, nope. I would never trust another person outside of my company to put the same amount of heart and the same amount of value into every single deal we're doing. If we are stopping a homeowner from losing their home and we have 24 hours to stop that foreclosure, I can't trust somebody else to do that. I need to put in 100% of our effort to make sure that that happens. So TC being in-house, extremely important. Now, there are TC companies out there that can help you with every type of deal. I would feel comfortable with cash deals, but when it comes to creative, learning how to do that or working with somebody that does, I would never want that to slip through the cracks, and I would never want to fail that family. So once you got the transaction coordination done, then the last and final step is going to be your dispo. Okay. This is going to be your exit strategy, so to speak. People call me a wholesaler. I am not a wholesaler. I am a direct to seller marketer. And sometimes I wholesale my deals that I may not want to keep for my portfolio. So wholesaling is a great way of making quick money fast. But I mean, let's put it this way. That deal I mentioned before, 50% down, but 0 payments and 0 interest to the seller for 10 years. I'm going to keep that because it's going to cash flow. And what's going to happen in 10 years is I'm going to be able to sell that property or refinance that property. And I'm going to get that seller their balloon payment. And now I've got a cash flowing asset. This house I'm living in right now, This is a 6-bed, 4-bath that I took down subject to. I took it down subject to. I said to the seller, I can either give you a cash of 570, or I can give you a seller finance, or basically a down the way payment of 750. They chose 750, and believe it or not, it's actually the same terms. It's 0 payments, 0% interest for 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, I'm paying the seller their additional equity that they had in the property. So, but again, like working with somebody that knows how to structure the deal for acquisitions, that's going to kind of help you decide on what your exit strategy is going to be. Because if you don't lock it up with a big spread, you might only have one choice. Maybe that's assignment. Maybe that's just like, hey, I got to get rid of the deal. One of the deals we're buying right now from a local here in Utah, great guy. The actual cash flow on that is probably going to be negative. But I'm going to come in and I'm going to wait until I could raise rent. And you know what? I'm okay paying $20 or $50 a month for the next few years, because that's only going to come to a few $100s, maybe $1,000. But after I could raise rent after a couple of years, then it's going to become positive cash flow. But do you want to know how much I'm going in it with? $22,000. I'm buying a house for $22,000 in Salt Lake. So once you get the deal, then the exit strategy is up to you. But wholesaling, keeping it, whatever it is, this is kind of, again, this is the overview. That was loud. This is the overview of what it looks like to create a business. And if you are okay doing one deal a year, be okay with that. But if you're looking to scale out a business and create a multiple, like 6-figure, 7-figure business, then you have to start to figure out how to leverage out those positions, because you can't do it all on yourself. And so again, that rocket fuel test that I was talking about, where I was the 50-50 integrator visionary, I'm 100% visionary right now. My job is to lock up the sellers, get them at a lower price. My team is great at it, but sometimes they come in, they go, hey, Jeremy, can we good cop, bad cop this? Can we figure out a way to get this seller to come down on their price a little more? And that's when I come in. Or I'm also on podcasts. I'm networking. I'm creating more opportunities. I'm trying to find different ways to stretch outside of my local market to find different opportunities. And so I think that's it. I've been talking a lot.
Dude, this was like a freaking masterclass right now. I'm just like, this is for like newer investors, but I'm rethinking like so much stuff right now, because I took that test literally, I think it was maybe 2 nights ago, and I got the double where I'm like both visionary and integrator. And I was originally a visionary in my mind, and I knew that. And then I've been, because out of necessity, I've had to do more of the integration stuff and come up with the system. So I'm like, oh, I'm an integrator now. And so now I'm stuck in the middle, and I'm like, oh crap. Okay. So now I need to really pick what I want to do. But most people that I would bring in are other visionaries. So maybe I need to go out and find the integrator, because I don't necessarily like to do that kind of stuff, but I like putting up the systems and seeing it from a whole. But putting it all together and nerding out, all that stuff, I don't like it as much.
Have you read the book Who Not How?
Not yet. No, that's on my list for sure.
Okay, that needs to be your next book. Okay. So even Alex, my partner, I'm forcing him to read that book, because Alex is a great integrator. He's absolutely fantastic. He loves spreadsheets. He loves all the systems and all that kind of stuff. But here's something Alex is not good at. Who Not How teaches you who to hire, not how to do it yourself. Right. So Alex does everything himself. He does the website design, or he does the CRM, or whatever it may be. And I'm like, no, brother, we need to hire somebody to do the website design. I know you want to control that. I know you want to feel like that's your little baby and whatever, but no, let's hire somebody else to do it. Like right now I'm getting sued. Okay. I'm getting sued for something that has nothing to do with anything. It's an assignment deal that's in Atlanta. We assigned the contract to somebody. We were actually helping out a student with a JV. And so they brought this lead to us. We locked it up and we assigned it out. And right now the tenant is suing all of the parties, the seller, the assigner, and the buyer for because they were trying to evict them. So they're trying to stop the eviction. And so right now I'm getting sued, but guess what? I'm going to hire an attorney. I don't care how much it costs. It's because I have the money. I don't have the bandwidth. If I spent time trying to go and figure out this case and try to file the motion myself and do all that kind of stuff, I am worth so much more money for my time than it would be just hiring an attorney and have them do that for me. And so who, not how, you need to read that
Yeah.
because you need to identify that, you know what, it's okay to let go of the menial tasks that you don't need to control. And that's, again, where, as I have a VA company, we teach every client to document your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. Because if you're ever going to want to leverage yourself out of that position, you are going to need to have what you do on a daily basis documented. So wake up, check emails, make yourself breakfast, go and make some phone calls, seller calls. If you document those standard operating procedures of what you do for everything, now you can start to identify what can be let go and what you need to hold on to still. And eventually that thing you hold on to, you're going to elevate that to a point where you can then let go of that and move on to the next thing, You think Pace spends a minute on designing any system he comes up with? No, he's got his people down below him. He says, I want Gator lending. Gator lending's done. And it may not be done great, but people are still going to be, scurrying around to figure out how to implement his vision. And right now, bro, you are a visionary that is trying to hold on to your menial tasks. Let them go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sweet Jesus. Wow, dude. Yeah, this was there's a lot here. This is one where people can go back again and again and just chunk this out and even just the conveyor belt start, because I think a lot of newbies, there's so much information. It's a fire hose, especially if you join sub 2. Like you said, it's all shiny object syndrome. So how do you come in and laser focus on one thing? Is there a starting point that works for everybody, or is everybody different and they have to find it on their own?
Everybody is different. They all have to find it on their own. But what they mostly have to do is put on the blinders. And this is what I tell every new student that I talk to. I'm a leader within sub 2, so I have a lot of new students that come to me. Find something you're passionate about. Okay. One thing that Pace did, and I know that outside of sub 2, you guys don't have this, but he did the Avatar series, right? Which is going into, and if you guys are not part of sub 2, it's not a big deal, but it's really a matter of identifying all the different positions that exist within real estate investment. And in real estate investment, there is not one, the hardest part about real estate is there's not one way to be successful. There are a million different variations to find success. There are people that are incredible at short-term rentals. There are people that are land development. There are millions and millions of dollars available to all of us throughout real estate. But the most important thing that you're going to have to do, if you're a new investor or you're a beginner, you wouldn't even call yourself an investor yet. I remember in the beginning, I had a hard time saying that before I got my first deal. But if you are a new investor, find where your passion is. Is it going to be talking to sellers, or is it going to be setting up systems, or is it going to be whatever it is? Find something that you're passionate about and focus on that. And don't focus on the other thing that's right next to you that you see somebody else being successful at. Because if I was sitting next to you at a dinner table and I started talking to you about Salt Lake, but you yourself were in Charlotte, North Carolina, you would start to think to yourself, wow, Salt Lake sounds like a great market. But Charlotte is absolutely fantastic, right? So the grass is greener on the other side is a human fallacy that we say to ourselves over and over and over again that, oh my God, look at how easy they're handling this. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But the truth is, everything you do in real estate is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And all you're seeing are the successes. Every guru out there does not talk about their hardships. They only talk about their success. I can tell you right now, 90% of my success is due to 100% of my failures, right? And I learn through that, all those problems that occur every single day. I have had so many downs, so many depressive days where I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I just want to sit on my phone. But then I go, nope, I'm putting the phone down. I'm getting up and I'm going to be 1% better every single day. And as long as you push that envelope forward every single day, you're going to get 1% closer to reaching where you want to be. And in 100 days, you are now 100% further than you were 100 days earlier. If you do 1% every day, you are 365% further than you were when you first started in 1 year. Right now, you and I are speaking on a Sunday. Do you think that I want to relax and spend time with my child? I would love to. But I also know that 1% every day, this is my 1% right now. That's it.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, brother. I really appreciate that because, yeah, I do know, it does take that daily consistency, and that's where I've really seen a lot of progress is just showing up every day and doing a little bit, even though it may not be some spectacular outcome for the day. You're pushing something forward, and real estate has really helped me, I guess, look really far into the future. Before I was doing, maybe I was looking a year ahead. What do I want to do next year? Now I'm looking, 30 years ahead, which kind of helps
Right.
me work backwards from there. And I know it's something that I'm doing today is going to help me achieve that I want to get towards the end. So
I'll
that's
leave you with
huge.
one last thing. I want
Oh
to leave
yeah.
you with one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012, Pace Morby made a post on Bigger Pockets saying, "Hey everyone, my name is Pace Morby. I'm a new investor. I want to be just like you. I come from a contractor. My family's contractors, and I want to become investors just like you." This was in 2012.
That's
Okay. So,
nuts.
so in 10 years, Pace went from being a basic contractor with his family to in 10 years being a multi millionaire. I'm happy where I've been in 2 years. I can imagine what it's going to be like in 8 more. Right. That's the way that I think about this. I'm stoked to see where I'm going to be and where you're going to be and where everyone's going to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like, the last thing that I regret is that so many times I said to myself, I'm too old to do this. I'm 41 years old and I'm stoked that I got started 2 years ago. But my God, if I got started when I was 20, whew,
I know, man.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why I'm pumped when I see really young people getting into it, and you try to push your values into them, like, look, man, you got to show up every day. But I think some of that does come with age and realizing the stuff that doesn't matter, the stuff that you thought mattered really doesn't matter at all, and then now you're thinking like long term, and all the things that do matter you push to the forefront, and that's what you're working for.
do you have any kids?
I don't. I'm working on it. So I'm
It,
getting my
it's
wife
it's
on board.
definitely
So
interesting. Like, my why, right? Why I was doing this. My why has always been myself, not being my father, not being a
okay.
financial failure. I came from absolute financial. We got evicted, lived in our cars, like got food donated to us. Like, I do not come from any form of wealth whatsoever. So my why for my entire life has always been, don't be my dad. But now I've got a son,
Mm-hmm.
and now my why is shifting,
Mm.
where I know I'm not going to be a failure. I know that financially, I'm never going to be a failure. It's never going to happen. My financial thermostat is much, much higher than it was for my father. My father was, maybe he'd make $100 a week and he'll be happy. I'm not happy with that. Maybe $100
Mm-hmm.
an hour I'll be okay with, but I'm waiting till it's a lot more than that even. But now that I have a son, he's 3 months old, now, oh, speak of the devil, now it's a matter of, what can I do to set him up? And what can I do to not train, but teach him that when you're 21 years old, going out to a bar and trying to get laid is fun and all, but starting a business and becoming a financial success and becoming a multi millionaire by the time you're 30,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a lot more girls available to you then than you
Right.
would at the bar when 21.
Exactly.
And so it's things like that. Give me in.
Amazing. Yay.
But this is,
Yeah.
hi buddy, this is Roan. So
Oh,
Roan
so
Archer
cute.
Davis, his
There you
initials are
go.
rad.
Oh
So
yes, dude.
yeah. But anyway, whew,
That's so good. Right on. Okay. Well, Jeremy, this was beyond amazing. I appreciate you coming on a Sunday when I know you could be hanging out with family. Really means a lot, and it really shows. It's really testament to how much you give to the community as not only sub two but just real estate investors in whole. So, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do it? What's the best way?
my handle is going to be the Jeremy Davis. So TheJeremyDavis. You can find me on Instagram. And if you could, I'd love for you to follow me on YouTube. So youtube.com/at the Jeremy
Mm-hmm.
Davis, because I'm going to be creating a lot more long form stuff.
Nice.
So a lot more educational videos, things that I've been talking about today. I'm going to get into much deeper dives. So Instagram is fun for the reels, but I mean, they're minutes long. I want to go into such much more deeper conversations. And also, as you can see behind me, I've got my podcast. So I'm going to have that on YouTube as well. And so, yeah, at the Jeremy Davis.
Amazing. Right on, you guys. So yeah, go show Jeremy some love on all of his socials. He is a wealth of knowledge. So I'm sure all that long form content is just going to be absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see that. In the meantime, subscribe to this podcast for weekly motivation so you can hear investors, new and experienced, what they had to go through to get their first deal, and send this to someone who might be struggling. Don't let them quit, because oftentimes that first deal can seem a million miles away, but it's actually right around the corner. So again, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it, brother. And I'll see you on Monday, actually, tomorrow.
Cool. Absolutely, brother. Awesome.
See you,
Have a
man.
good night.
All right, bye.